Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to JpGU to give me a Nishida Prize. I am very honored to have a lecture in this section. I'd like to also thank organizers to give me this opportunity. Today, my talk is stratospheric circulation changes associated with global warming. Here is the atmosphere. So Huixin-san's talk is around here, but my talk is in the stratosphere. The most lower part is the troposphere. We are living in the troposphere, but above the troposphere, there is the stratosphere. The altitude about 12 kilometers to 50 kilometers. My talk today is related to this stratosphere. When you ride on the plane, you can see, for example, Mount Fuji below. Here is the troposphere, but you can see a very clear and blue sky above. This is the stratosphere. So about the global warming study, many phenomena related to the troposphere have been investigated, but we found a fingerprint of global warming in the stratosphere too. So I'd like to explain the current updated studies over the past 10 years, and the main target are the stratospheric QBO and Boulier-Dobson circulation, which I will explain next. I explain the quasi-biennial oscillation in the stratosphere. This is a movie. Here is the Earth, and blue color is easterly. This is a westward wind, and red color shows a westerly, sometimes called as eastward wind. So please note that this is an expanded atmosphere to make it visible. So in the stratosphere, in the equatorial region, there is a westerly and easterly, which alternate with period about 28 months. That is why this oscillation is quasi-biennial oscillation. So if we see the latitude height cross-section of the zonal wind, again the red is westerly and blue is easterly. You can see that both easterly and westerly are generated in the upper part of the stratosphere around 50 kilometers and propagate downward like this. And this is QBO, and this QBO is appeared around the tropopods around 18 kilometers. So if we light the time height cross section, you can see such a clear downward propagating phenomena. This is the QBO. So the QBO is believed to be driven by atmospheric waves, mostly due to the gravity waves. Here is a picture of the cumulus convection in the tropics. So in the cumulus convection, generated both westward and eastward waves, whose waves has westward and eastward momentum flux. So I explain very brief mechanism of the QBO. So here is the cumulus convection, generated westward waves and eastward waves. Here in the stratosphere, the wind is eastward wind, the red wind. So due to the theory, the waves whose horizontal velocity is opposite to the background zonal wind can propagate easily to the upward. So under the westerly eastward wind, the westward waves can propagate more easily to the upper stratosphere. Then if these westward waves are dissipated, this zonal wind changes westward wind. Next, the westward can reach here and make this westward. Next is this westward. So all background wind become westward wind. Then the eastward waves can propagate more upward. Then makes eastward here and eastward here and eastward here. Then again this condition. So you can see that clear downward propagation of the zonal wind. This is a very brief mechanism of the QBO. So I want to say why the QBO is important. Although the QBO is a phenomenon in the tropical stratosphere here, only here, but its effect from the pole, South Pole to Northern Pole, and from the surface to the mesopoles, around 100 kilometers. For example, the stratospheric polar net jet, a strong westerly jet, are modulated by the phase of the QBO. And sea surface pressure in the extratropics are also modulated by the phase of the QBO. For example, here is in UK. So it is known that during the QBO westerly, the UK meet more flat. So UK people recognize the QBO is very important for weather forecasts in this region. And very recently, the Martin-Julian oscillation, which is a very big cloud clusters in the tropics, are more active during the QBO easterly phases. So the QBO is a very important phenomenon over the world. Next, I'd like to explain the Brewer-Dobson circulation. Here is a schematic figure of the circulation in the stratosphere. You can see that in the stratosphere, there is an upwelling over the equator, and this circulation moves both poleward. And in the higher latitude, this circulation is downwelling, a kind of two cells circulation. This circulation was found by Alan Brewer and Gordon Dobson. So this is called Brewer-Dobson circulation. So as you know, the ozone is generated in the tropical stratosphere here. Then the Brewer-Dobson circulation transport ozone to the higher latitude. That is why we can live here. So if the Brewer-Dobson circulation, which is called BDC afterward, stopped suddenly or happened to stop, we cannot live in Japan. So this is very important circulation. And to summarize, here is the QBO is in the tropical stratosphere. The QBO propagates from the upward to downward during the upwelling associated with Brewer-Dobson circulation. So in the current climate, the wave forcing which drives the QBO is larger effect than the effect of upwelling. That is why the QBO propagates downward more easily in the current climate. So next I'd like to explain my previous studies. So around about 10 years ago, there were no studies of the QBO associated with global warming. So almost no studies, exactly. So I tried to do the first comprehensive studies of the QBO using the MILOC climate model. The MILOC is developed Aori, Nice, and Jamstek. Here is projected precipitation changes, future minus present climate. You can see the blue colors in the tropics, which means tropics precipitation increases in the future, which is very common features in all climate model simulation. So as I explained, the gravity waves are generated by the tropical convection. So at first, I expected this situation makes more gravity waves and then should make stronger QBO. But my expectation was totally opposite. This is a simulated QBO, the time height cross section of zonal wind. Again, the red is westerly, eastward wind, and the blue is the easterly, westward wind. Here is the present climate simulation, and the bottom is the future climate. You can see that in the future climate, the amplitude of QBO become weaker, especially in the lowermost stratosphere. and the period become longer. And sometimes the QBO becomes more unstable in the global warming climate. So I was very confused to see this picture at the first time and tried to consider many things. At first, I doubted the computer bug, but it's not. So precipitation increased, but wave flux does not increase. But I found the wave flux were increased. So here, I skipped the details, including mechanisms, in this presentation, but show results most easily. So this figure shows the profiles of tropical upwelling in the present climate in black and future climate in red. And right figure shows the ratio of tropical upwelling, future divided by present. So you can see that tropical upwelling associated with Brewer-Dobson circulation become much stronger in the future climate, about 40% increased in the lower stratosphere. And I also analyzed the momentum budget and confirmed the effect of tropical upwelling is larger than the increased momentum flux. So this is a kind of summary of my simulated result. This is a present climate QBO, and the right is a warming climate QBO. So both QBO become going downward, but tropical upwelling increased significantly, especially in the lower part of the stratosphere. So the QBO cannot propagate downward as in the present climate. That is why the amplitude of the QBO become weaker, especially in the lowermost stratosphere. So this is, I said, due to the strength Brewer-Dobson circulation in the future climate. So this is very well known because almost all climate models in the world projected strengthened Brewer-Dobson circulation associated with global warming. So this is simulation, but we have to know the real atmosphere. But you know that this Brewer-Dobson circulation, the speed is about 0.3 milli per second. For example, walking speed of ants are about 10 to 100 milli per second. So you can imagine that this tropical upwelling is very slow. So in the by the current instrument, it is totally impossible to directly observe the Brewer-Dobson circulation. Instead, so many studies attempt to estimate change in the upwelling using observational data, but these studies have yielded ambitious, inconclusive, and also contradictory results. So we cannot observe this tropical upwelling directly, but we have high-quality radio-Donde zonal wind observations near equatorial region more than 60 years. The observations started around 1950s. So instead of estimate the tropical upwelling, I try to analyze the zonal wind and QBO amplitude changes using this observational zonal wind, then calculated the QBO amplitude. So here is a time height cross-section of the QBO amplitude. And this figure shows the vertical profile of the amplitude trend. And this is a QBO amplitude at 70 hectopascal, the lowermost stratosphere. So you can see that clear decreasing trend of the QBO is found in the lowermost stratosphere. So this was the first report of long-term trend in observed QBO amplitude. But this figure is only one data. So the reviewers suggest me to analyze other data. So I collected the data as many as possible. So here is the map of the observational, in situ observational point. So around the equator, there are 220 observational points, but there were only 6 stations to calculate QBO amplitude trend. But I analyzed the same thing, but I have confirmed all stations shows a statistically significant decreasing trend. So I was confident to the result. At that time, we had also the simulation from other countries. As I explained, I did this kind of experiment at the first, but after 2 or 3 years, there are the CMIP5 models, which is used for IPCC AR5 report, could be used. So I collected 4 models which simulated the QBO and calculated the QBO amplitude changes for 200 years. So you can see that all models projected weaker amplitude of the QBO, especially at the lowermost stratosphere. And this is a kind of summary. Here is the observation. The QBO left panels are the QBO amplitude, and right panels are the mean tropical upwelling. Of course, there is a 60 years recording observations, but impossible to observe directly for the mean tropical upwelling. Instead, we analyzed German model, UK model, and 2 MIROC models. All models projected the weakening amplitude of the QBO and increased tropical upwelling. And these models have also the non-global warming experiment. So I also analyzed the no global warming, which is a so-called pre-industrial control run. I have confirmed the QBO and the tropical upwelling changes are not occurred in such an experiment. So we have a confidence that the trend of the QBO amplitude and mean tropical upwelling is due to the global warming. So this is a paper in 2013, about 7 years ago. But the number of models simulating the QBO increased dramatically for last a few years. For example, this is a time height cross-section of equatorial zonal wind in CMIP3, 2007. These models were used to write a report of IPCC AR4, and this is a CMIP5. You can see some models succeed in simulating the QBO. And this is the most latest models on CMIP6, which will be used to write a report of IPCC AR6. So you can see the number of the QBO increased dramatically, although some models simulate the strange QBO. Then we tried to do the same things using the latest models. Here, the left panel shows the QBO amplitude time variation in CMIP6 models. Many models shows a decreasing trend, and this is vertical profiles of the QBO amplitude trend. It's very consistent with our earlier study, which shows a very weak negative trend is larger in the lowermost stratosphere. So we have now confident the decreasing QBO amplitude. But on the other hand, this is a trend of QBO period in each models. So some models projected shorter period, but the other models projected longer period. And only bold is statistically significant. So above all models, most models do not have a significant result about the QBO period changes. So we still do not have any confidence about QBO period changes. So this is another experiment which is done in the QBO-I international project. So we did we did the same experiment in the present climate and double CO2 simulation and 4 times CO2 simulation in each models. So you can see in the present climate, all QBO-I models simulate the reasonably well the QBO here. But in the double CO2 simulations, as I said, the amplitude become weaker, especially in the lowermost stratosphere. But 4 times CO2, the QBO become more and more unstable like this. And sometimes the QBO, this is the UK models, disappears in the extremely global warming climate. This is a very interesting result. And again, we back to the observational record. Here, I again show the QBO from 1953 to 2015. You can see the clear downward propagation of easterly and westerly, which is a common QBO. So we learned the QBO from the textbook like this. And we have believed the QBO is a persistent and quasi periodic oscillation. It was true until 2015, but 2016, we saw the first QBO disruption here. That is easterly jet formed during westerly phase. This is not the QBO which was explained by one-dimensional theory of gravity waves. So we were very surprised to see this figure at the first time, and now we know the reasons. But as we projected, the QBO become more stable in the global warming climate. Again, very recently, or just now, the second QBO disruption was forming like this, the westerly here and easterly is here, and the easterly stopped here. So we cannot conclude exactly this is due to global warming, but at least we can say the QBO is not as stable as previously thought. And this is a summary of my talk today. So over past 10 years, new knowledge of QBO modulation with global warming was obtained. And at first, I tried to do the first comprehensive simulations of global warming QBO and clarify the mechanism of weakening of the QBO. And next, I analyzed the long-term radiation observation and discovered a fingerprint of global warming in the tropical stratosphere of the QBO. And this trend is confirmed by the latest simulations. And this discovery of QBO trend provide strong support for the existence of long-term trend of enhanced tropical upwelling. But we have a very large confidence that the QBO amplitude become weak in the global warming climate, but we still do not have confidence about the future change of the QBO period. But we know the QBO is become more unstable with global warming, and in observational record, we found the QBO is not as stable as previously, although we do not know exactly this is due to the global warming or not. And as I introduced, QBO influenced the seasonal prediction, such as NJO and sea level pressure or storm tracks. So the ECMWF, the biggest center for the seasonal prediction, weather prediction, try to simulate the QBO like this, try to forecast QBO. This is a black line shows the real atmosphere, and each red line shows the ensemble of ECMWF centers. So they try to simulate the forecast the QBO in order to investigate the effect of the QBO to other phenomena. But such QBO's unstable condition makes it more difficult to predict in seasonal forecast. So we have to do more research from short seasonal to long-term scales. This is my talks, but finally, I'd like to express my acknowledgement. So Professor Takahashi was my supervisor during PhD course student and recommended me Nishida Prize. And Professor Miyahara and Hiroka was a teacher during the undergraduate school student. Then Professor Hiroka also writes a support letter of the Nishida Prize. And most of the study presented today was done with Professor Kevin Hamilton. So I had a chance to visit IPRC about 10 years ago, thanks to Jamstack support. Then I wrote many papers with him. And in Jamstack, the Matsuno sensei, Tokioka sensei, Ninomiya sensei, and Noda-san, and Kawamiya-san are very kind to me. And when I was a student of CCSR University of Tokyo, Smith sensei, Kimo sensei, and Emery-san were very kind. And for the research, Hiroto sensei, Tsuda sensei, Sato sensei, Takeyabu sensei, Nakamura sensei provided me a very helpful comment in all ways. And Professor Takayabu also wrote a support letter to the Nishida Prize. And I also express my gratitude to these people. Thank you very much. This is all my talk today.